Hi, it's Leigh. Welcome to Messy Imperfect Life with Leigh podcast. I'm doing some new stuff with my podcast. I'm actually focusing on talking about the mess with people who are involved in the crypto world because I found out that in the crypto world, it's usually people who are in it are from 10 to, I mean, 10, 20 to 30 males are dominating it. And I want to bring in my generation, 50 and over, and it's never too late to get in the game. So I'm excited about my guest today and guests coming up that will educate myself and you guys in crypto so we can get, join in because it is for everyone. So today, my guest, I'm so excited to have here. His name is Stephan Perez, and I actually just met him yesterday. And I want to jump right in. Welcome, Stephan.
Hi, Leigh. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to speak with you again.
Fantastic. So, a quick background about us. Stephan and I met, was it last night or yesterday afternoon?
It was last night. Yeah, not too long ago.
It was last night. And I met this really amazing guy that I'm working with named Martin Goman. And he was like, "Hey, Leigh, these friends of mine who are in my fraternity in college at Columbia are doing something really cool in the Web3 space." I don't even know if I said that right. Did I, Stephan? Web3 space?
Yeah, Web3, Web3. Yeah, perfect.
So he told me about you guys, and I was like, I'm wide open to everything at this point because I'm so interested in learning about crypto and that you guys you're doing like my two favorite things right now: spirituality, which is my shining star of my life and keeps me playing big because I'm connected to that, and crypto. So I'm so happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here. And I've been on a spiritual path since I was a little kid, and it's been growing in that sense. And then I've been on this crypto path for the last few years, and it's been exciting. Like, the space moves so fast. So I love to be able to combine these two spaces that I love into this passion project that I'm working on.
That is what I love. It's like and we were talking about this yesterday, when you get into spirituality, and I know that you mentioned meditation, and, Deepak Chopra says that um, one thing that everyone should do every day is meditate. And if you say you're too busy, then you should do it twice a day. And I just love that because it's the grounding force that keeps us really sane and connected to our true self, not the crazy ass spinning.
It's so easy to get carried away in the day-to-day life, in your own head, in this hectic world. So we all need some kind of balance. We need some tool, and meditation could definitely be that. It could be that. It's there for us to use.
How'd you get into it?
How did I get into meditation? Well, I had to go through some really difficult situations in life to really get into meditation. I grew up always.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I grew up praying, and my mom and my grandma always taught me about like the power of prayer, and that was very helpful in my life. But meditation when I was young really wasn't present. And then when I was in college, I went through like a really challenging situation, and it really it was like the most extreme thing I ever went through, and it was that situation that brought me to meditation.
Okay, so I'm so happy that you brought that up because this is messy, right? This podcast is about sharing our mess because we all have it. And the more we talk about it, not only are we reminded we're not alone, but it reminds other people as well, you're not alone, because we're all going through the same stuff with different words. So this morning, because we met last night, I jumped online really quick to get a nugget about you so I could have something to work with. And the first thing that popped up is what you're talking about, what happened to you at the University of Columbia. Is that what you call it, the University of Columbia, or just Columbia?
Yeah, Columbia University, yeah.
Columbia University. Okay, would you tell me what happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because, in this day and age that we live in, like, everyone Googles anyone, right? If you're going to meet with someone for a business meeting or go on a date or just anything, you Google someone, and this is something that's out there. And, it's really interesting how it's portrayed online because they definitely tell a story, but they certainly don't capture the full story. So I'd be more than happy to tell you about my experience. But yeah, so Columbia University was it was like a life dream of mine to go to that school. So I grew up in Georgia, in Marietta, Georgia, and Georgia's a beautiful, wonderful state, really calm. And I had this uncle, this great uncle, and this great aunt that lived in New York City. And every summer when I was 10 years old, starting when I was 10, they started inviting me to go visit them. And so one week every summer I'd go visit them, and I absolutely loved it. Like I fell in love with New York instantly. Like they were both such proud New Yorkers, and they would take me to the best museums, the best restaurants, like every neighborhood in the city. And like I just knew I wanted to be in New York. And like I knew I couldn't convince my parents to move to New York, but I knew somehow I needed to get to New York. And so every summer I looked forward to that week. And for me, New York felt like, I was like, oh my God, I was like, this is life. I was like, I need to do everything I can to get out here. And so the last summer that I went, I was 13 years old, and I had a great week. My uncle took me to all these amazing places. And on the very last day, he said to me, hey, I want to take you to this school in Manhattan. And I thought, okay, like I mean, it wasn't necessarily my first choice. Like I would have preferred to have gone to like the zoo that day or to a toy store, but I've always been like a go with the flow type of person. So I said, sure, let's go to this school. And so the school he took me to was Columbia University. Mm-hmm. And the reason he took me there is because he got his master's degree from Columbia, and he always had like a very special place in his heart for that school. So he just wanted to introduce me to that school.
I love that.
Yeah. And like at the time, I had no idea how large of an impact that visit to the school was going to be.
What did you think when you were there? You were just checking it out, going, "Oh, this is pretty cool. Glad you went here, uncle or grandpa."
He was my great uncle. So he was my
great uncle.
He was my grandma's brother.
Okay.
So we arrive at Columbia, and I just remember arriving to those mighty gates on 116th and Broadway, and they're absolutely beautiful, right? And I just remember like stepping foot on campus, and it was like the first time I ever felt like true alignment, like just universal alignment. Like
wow.
Like I knew at that moment that I was like exactly where I needed to be.
At 13.
At 13. And like it just really felt like the stars aligned. And so my uncle was telling me about the campus and how he took classes there, and he signed me up for a tour of the school. And so I took a tour with all these 17-year-olds that were applying to college, right? So I was really young. I was like way too young for that age group. However, I was always a bit taller. I looked a bit older, and so I kind of like I fit in. And I just remember seeing all these buildings and like all the monuments outside of the buildings, and like the place just felt just beyond legendary. Like I could just tell that so many brilliant minds went through this school. And at the time I thought, like, I don't know what I need to do to get here, but like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get here. And I remember as we were doing this tour, the tour guide was talking about the application process and how you have to write an essay for the admissions process. And at the time I was 13, and like, I didn't like the idea of an essay. I was like, oh no, I got to write an essay. Right. And so like, I immediately knew I had to write an essay. And so at the end of the tour, I looked at my uncle and I said, Uncle Saul, I'm going to come to this school. Like this is the school I'm going to go to. And when I move to New York, we're going to hang out every day. And like, this school is going to be my ticket to New York City.
I bet that warmed his heart because he was so excited to show it to you.
Yeah, he thought it was going to be like a fun activity, but I don't think he had any idea how inspirational it was going to be for me. And so I knew, like, I didn't even know what an Ivy League school was. I grew up in Georgia. I went to public school. Like, people around me were definitely not going to Ivy League schools.
So I want to interrupt for a second, because the first thing before I read what we're going to talk about, what went down with you while you were there, is how the hell you got there. Like, that's miraculous. I want to know how you were one of 1,000 that Bill Gates sent. Was it full ride?
It was a full ride.
How in the hell did you get that?
Well, so I would say I've gotten everything in my life. I've gotten everything that I've ever wanted in my life since I was little. Good, bad, small, extremely large. I've gotten everything, and it's been through like the power of manifestation. Like even before I knew what manifestation was, like I was practicing it since I was really little. And so at that moment, I decided that I was going to go to Columbia, and there was just going to be no other option. Like that was it. And like I didn't know how tough of a school it was to get into. I didn't know.
How in the hell did you get aligned with Bill Gates? I can't wait any longer.
Okay, so I ended up like pretty much by the time like the rest of my middle school years, and then by the time I got to high school, I got super focused. Like I pretty much cut out every activity. I stopped playing sports, and I knew I had to have pretty much perfect grades. And so academically, like I completely dedicated myself. I've always been like a natural leader, so I took on all these leadership roles on campus, and like I just had tunnel vision that I was going to go to Columbia, and I just visualized it, and I visualized it. And I would tell people, they would ask me like, where do you want to go to college? And I'd say Columbia. And a lot of people would kind of laugh. They'd be like, oh, that's an Ivy League school. Like, do you really think you're going to get to go to Columbia? Like,
oh, hell yeah.
You know how tough it is to get there. And it was always these excuses as to like why I couldn't go, but like, I just couldn't hear it. And like, even like counselors at school, like they're like, you have to have other backup schools.
Okay, wait a second. I want to sit in this for a minute. So you had a knowing you were going. It was lit up in your body. Yes. As soon as you hit high school, you're like, now it's a time to put the pedal to the metal. Right. So you did visualize, you did have a deep knowing, but what's the most important is the taking action, right? Because if we have a vision and we don't take action, God's not going to just drop it on our lap. We still have to walk to it. So you put the pedal to the metal, focus in so hard. So it could be a possibility for you.
Exactly.
And go on.
And so this focus and this inspiration really drove me. But then there was something else that happened that like took my drive to the next level. So it was my sophomore year of high school. I remember I was finishing up finals, and my mom picked me up from school, and she had like a pretty somber tone. And she said, hey, I have to tell you, your uncle's not doing so well. He's in a hospice, and he, he's just not doing well. And so I said to my mom, I said, Mom, please let me go see him. I was like, for Christmas, like I just want to go see him. And she said, okay, like I'll send you to New York. So I went to New York, and every time like I'd gone to New York, it was always summertime. So it was always like really like just sunny, beautiful weather. This was the first time I went to New York, and it was like rainy. It was cold. Like the weather really reflected everything that was going on. And I went to go see my uncle, and he was in like really tough shape, right? And but from the moment like I entered the room, like he lit up. Like he definitely he knew who I was. Like he definitely communicated with me as well as he could. And so I thanked him. I said, Uncle, thank you so much for bringing me to Columbia University. Like I told him, I promise you, I'm going to go to that school. Like this is the promise I make to you. And I knew when I was going to, I was young, but I knew he was getting ready to ascend. And so a few days later, I left New York.
I like that word. I like ascend.
Yeah. Like I knew like he was getting ready to go on to
go home.
Yeah. Go home, graduate. Right. And so a couple of days later, he passed away. And obviously I was like really sad that, he had to leave us, but I was at peace in the sense that I got to thank him. I got to say my goodbye. And then I gave him this promise. So like this thing that was once a goal, it went from being a goal to becoming a promise. And at that point, when it was like a promise to a loved one that's deceased, that was like so much stronger than just something that like I want, right? And so like that put me even into more hyperdrive, right? And so I get to my senior year, and I'm applying, and I apply to Columbia early decision, because like I knew I had to go there. And so my grades were up to par. I had good recommendations. And then I had to do the essay, like this essay that I had known about since I was 13. And I was pretty nervous because I knew for over 4 years that like this essay was coming. And I was like, oh my God, like what am I gonna say in this essay? And I
wait a second. Wait, before you get to the prayer, what cracks me up a tiny bit is that you knew it was coming, and you're like, oh shit, it's here. You knew for 4 years. And as opposed to like jotting down ideas in your notepad over a 4-year period and picking your favorite, you're like, oh, it's the essay I've been dreading. It's here. What am I going to do? Right. I love that.
Yeah, so like that essay was finally there, and at this point I wasn't dreading it, because like writing has definitely always been my passion, and over those couple of years I became a better writer and I became more comfortable with writing. But like it was like there was a lot of pressure, because I knew that this essay was really important. And so before I even like got into this essay, I just prayed. I just prayed that I could just pour my soul like into these words, and that whoever read my essay could connect with my light, and they could recognize how much it meant to me. And so
So
essentially,
wait, I got to stop on that too, because prayer is like a magic sauce. It's like the best sauce you can get on a burger or sandwich. It's directly connecting you to God. It's asking, right? Asking you shall receive. And it's also setting a clear intention why you're writing the freaking essay, right? Do you
yes,
want to pour your soul to have another soul be touched by it? I mean, it doesn't get deeper or better than that, or more simple with writing, or simpler. Anyway, I just freaking love that. So carry on. I just like have to stop you because you're saying so many gems
of
that we
course,
just got to savor it for a second.
of
Okay.
course. So when I went into writing this essay, like up until this point, like I typed most things, like most of my assignments, I typed them. Like I had the computer in my room, I was always typing. But with this essay, it was so personal, like I had to handwrite it. I had to handwrite it. And so I wrote it. With most of my other essays, like I would outline them and I would plan them. Like there was no outlining, there was no planning. It was just like the words just came out of me. And essentially the essay was this story that I just told you about, how I used to go visit New York with my uncle. And so at the end of the essay, I pretty much explained that I dedicate my essay as a eulogy to my uncle. So, like essentially, like yeah, it was my application essay, but it was also my eulogy to him. And like it was a very like heartfelt experience for me. And like by the time I was done writing it, like my tears were like staining the ink on like on the paper. But it was just so honest. Like it was like I just put my, like I didn't brag about myself. It wasn't one of those where like, oh, I'm a straight A student, I started. No, I just like told like
you showed your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just put it all out there. And I submitted the essay with my application, and then I waited. And sure enough.
Wait, how was that wait?
It was.
How long and how was it?
I think it might have been like a month, because it was early decision. So I was going to find out before.
Were you nervous like every day the mail was coming, or?
You know what? I maybe had a little bit of nervousness, but I knew I was going to get in. Like
you knew.
I just knew it. I just knew it.
Okay, so when you got the envelope,
so at that time, like they did send an envelope, but before you got the envelope, there was like email? Yeah, like an email essentially. And so like they let you know via email. And so I remember the day, I think it was like December 13th at like 5 p.m. They let us know. And so, I was with my family, my mom, my grandma, my dad, and the email came in, and the first thing that said was congratulations. And so that was just like it meant so much to me, to my family in New York.
You got accepted all on your own.
I got accepted. And I was like the first person in my high school to ever go to Columbia. Like people in my county weren't really particularly going to Ivy League schools, so like it was a pretty big deal and
huge.
And people were like, "Oh my God, you really did it! Like that thing you said you're gonna do, like you really did it." And so it was like the most exciting moment of my life, right? And then 2 weeks later, I ended up getting the financial aid package, right? And the financial aid didn't give me that much money, and I still owed like a bunch each year for tuition, and
which would put you in debt once you graduate, working just to pay that back for 5 or 10 years.
And like my parents at the time, like we had a very, very modest means, and so my parents were like, "Yo, we're so proud of you, but like we can't afford this tuition, and like we really want you to go, but you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna pay for it." And so I remember I went to.
It's like you get the hurdle over with by getting accepted, and then the next hurdle comes, right?
Right. And so like I'm looking at like this big tuition payment that I was gonna have to pay every year. And And so I thought, okay, look, I already got into Columbia. I'm not going to be the kid that gets there and then doesn't get to go for whatever reason. So my next thing was, okay, I'm going to manifest like my way there. Like, and so I went to like a little college fair, I think the next week. And I didn't find too many things there that helped me, except for one person told me about a scholarship called the Gates Millennium Scholarship. And they gave 1,000 of these scholarships out every year. But if you got this scholarship, it was going to be a full ride. And like these full rides would be to any school, and it could potentially even cover up to your PhD.
Wait, when you heard that, did your body light up or anything? Or like, did you have that same feeling you did about Columbia? Or did you just go, oh, that's an interesting fact?
It was like, this is it. Like, this is going to be like, I knew, I was like, I have to get that. I was like, I have to, no matter what, I have to get that.
Okay, wait, then I have to say something else here because I love this shit so much. I want to eat it. That you manifested that, right? Then another hurdle, like how big can you go, right, with yourself to allow yourself to really get there? And then you're like, shit, I guess I'll go to this little fair, right? So every single thing that we take action on, and that is when we're taking action and in line with why we're here, God has the people waiting for you. So some girl throws something out, which is all that you needed to hear and why you went. But sometimes people miss stuff like that, right? They're like, oh God, yeah, Bill Gates, whatever. But you were like, you just bit it. You're like, all right, let me figure this out.
Like, yeah, exactly.
This is the magic.
Like, yeah. I knew. So I told my counselor at school, and she was so helpful because she just knew how passionate I was. And she said, Stephan, like, I'm going to help you see this to the very end. And so I started to look at the application process for the Bill Gates Millennium Scholarship. And that entailed 9 different essays. So I was like, oh my God, I got to write 9 different essays. I was like, I wrote 1 already, but I have to write 9. And they were like pretty long essays. Like, I forget the word count, but they were like significantly long, these essays. And I remember the essay prompt.
Wow. Because you were dreading one essay for 4 years, and then boom, to actually get there, you have to write 9.
Yeah, I have to write 9 more.
Oh my God.
And so these essays were like, I remember the essay prompts were very simple, like simple to the point that they were kind of boring. It was like 5,000 words on like, what's your favorite subject and why? And like, just like very like simplistic.
Yes.
Right. So I said, okay, like, I'm going to do this. And I just, again, like, I just channeled my heart into these essays. Again, I poured my soul into these essays, and I made them super personal. Like, no matter how simple the prompt was, like, I made it super personal. And I just put my absolute best into these essays. And like, by the time I got halfway done with the essays, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot. But then my counselor was like, Stephan, you got to do this. Like, if you want to go to Columbia, you have to do this. So I pushed myself. I completed these essays. I sent it out. I put it in the universe. And then it was the waiting game.
Okay, and wait, I have to stop it here. So often people want to move from their heads, right? They want to overthink it. It's so simple. What am I supposed to say? Is there some trick here? Is there, which screws up any flow? But you went again, just with your heart, which is like connected to your soul, where only things flow. So you weren't moving from here. You kind of pushed your judgmental thoughts or your things about how much it is or what, and you just opened. Exactly. And gave your heart. Like, that's the biggest connector between people, when we can give our heart, when we show our vulnerability. It's just like, it's so freeing to the reader and to the giver. It's just amazing. Okay, keep going. The waiting game.
It's the waiting game. And I think the response took a bit longer than like my actual college acceptance. And so that was like, it was like a month or more, maybe a month and a half. And I remember I wasn't home when the response arrived. Like, I was working, I had some little job. Like,
was it email?
No, this one was like an actual packet, and it was like a huge packet. And so my mom called me, and she was just like so excited. She's like, something from the Gates Millennium Scholarship Foundation came in, and it's like really big. Like, it's really big. And I was like, Mom, like, open it. Like,
were you so nervous as you heard her ripping it open?
Yeah, I totally was, because it was like make or break it. But the way she described it, it was such a big packet. that I thought like, wow, if this is a rejection letter, this is like a really large rejection letter, because it was like a really large packet. And so I kind of like felt, I was like, this is it. And sure enough, like the first word was congratulations.
Do you have any idea how many people in the United States or world applied for those 1,000 acceptance letters?
I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely one of like, I don't think that scholarship program
Like hundreds of thousands.
I think it's up there. Like it's very competitive.
Yeah, because if it, yeah.
And so yeah, it's extremely competitive.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So that right there was like the absolute dream come true. It was just like such divine alignment, and like I was so happy. My family was so proud. Like my counselor was so proud. She helped me so much. Wherever she is, God bless her.
What's her name?
Her name is Stephanie David.
Stephanie David, thank you for being so awesome at your job and helping him. He got himself there, but assisting him along the way. It was awesome.
She really believed in me. And yeah, so I was on my way to my dream, and that feeling of like accomplishing your dream is like quite the feeling. And so I was just like so excited. And so like my last semester of school, like I still did well, like I didn't slack off, but I was just like so enthusiastic about going to Columbia. And so at the time, like being in Georgia, I didn't quite have the opportunity to go visit Columbia again. So like every day I would be like on Google looking at like images of Columbia. And I found out about this thing called Facebook that was kind of taken off at that time. And so I found out that Columbia had an accepted students group on Facebook. And so I made a profile, and yeah, I joined Facebook just to be a part of this accepted students group. And I was just like so excited, and like I couldn't like physically go to Columbia, but I could be on this group. And so I was like really active on this group. Like I was like posting under like everything. I was trying to like chat with everyone. And like, maybe like I overdid it. Like I like friended the entire class. Like,
what's wrong with that? You were excited.
I didn't think there's anything wrong with that.
But why do you think you overdid it? Did someone say something?
Oh, someone definitely said something. So yeah, someone definitely said something.
From Columbia or a student?
Both. I kind of, it made me very kind of like notorious before I even got to Columbia. So like I was so excited. I got accepted into this group, right? And then I met my roommate. Like we decided we were gonna be roommates. We got our housing assignment, and they gave us like a really great room, like one of the biggest rooms in the building we wanted to be in. So everything was just aligning. And so like I went on like the general like discussion board. I wasn't thinking much about it, and I just put party my room first night. Like just like I was so excited.
Yes.
And like I didn't think much about it. Like 2 days later, the school publication, I think it's called Blog. They came across my comment, and so they wrote an article about me, and they were talking about how our class was like a party class, and they called us the terrible 12s, and they particularly focused on me. They said a certain hypersocial freshman has invited the entire school to a party in his room. and so like, yeah,
I think that sounds glorious.
At the time, I didn't think like it was so bad. I was like, okay. I mean, it was definitely kind of like a sarcastic tone. They definitely kind of poked fun of me in the
yeah,
like in this article. However, like it wasn't the article that bothered me so much. It was more so the comments under it.
Oh
there was
gosh,
like hundreds and hundreds of comments. And so like I started reading the comments, and it was like,
oh, don't ever read the comments, because it's just people who hate themselves and they want to beat people up.
Yes. Yeah.
Usually. Oh.
And like at the time, like I didn't know that. Like this was kind of like one of my first
You're
times.
just all excited.
I was excited. I wasn't like really used to social media like that. And so I'm getting all these comments. And at first it's comments like, oh, this kid's whack, this kid's stupid, this kid's lame. Those didn't bother me. But then the comments got like more hurtful. Like some of the comments were, the only reason he got accepted into Columbia is because he's an affirmative action case.
Oh God.
The only reason that he got his Gates scholarship is because he's a poor minority. Like, have you seen his profile? I bet you both of his parents are legal immigrants.
Okay, wait a second. That already hurts my heart too much. And it's like after all the work you did and the focus and the determination and the nonstop to get yourself there, to hear one comment like that, I can't even imagine how much that hurt your heart.
Yeah, it definitely hurt my heart, and like I couldn't tell anyone. Like I couldn't tell my mom because like my family was so happy. Like I didn't want to bring this negativity to them. Plus, my mom wouldn't understand why I was trying to throw a party in my room to begin with. And so like I just kind of kept it to myself. But like what shocked me, so I grew up in the South and like I was used to racism. Like that's just, I mean, racism exists anywhere, but like in the South, maybe it's a little bit more obvious. And so I just wasn't expecting it at a school like Columbia, because I assumed like Columbia is like a very like liberal place, a very progressive
Yes.
place. And like it just kind of shocked me. And so I got really sad because I thought, wow, like I
Mm.
worked so hard and now they're just reducing me to like this party monster and they're judging my character, and like these people don't even know me. And so like the way I coped with it was I said, okay, if these people really think I'm a party monster, I'm going to show them, I'm going to show them what a real party is. And so I decided I called around Manhattan and I found one of the hottest clubs in the city, and I talked to the owner and I convinced her to let me rent out the club. And because there was no events for people that were 18 and up, right?
Right.
So I booked out this club and I partnered up with two other Columbia students and they helped me fund the event. And so essentially I booked out like this club at the time was called Club Duvet. It was a club filled with beds, and it was like in the Soho district. It was a super cool club. And so I booked out this club and I posted an event on Facebook that I was actually going to throw this party. And so that event kind of like went viral. At first we got like a couple hundred confirmations. Then we got a couple thousand confirmations.
Oh my goodness.
A bunch of students from all kinds of different universities across New York, in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. They
Oh
started.
my gosh.
So like, I think we got like something like 8,000 confirmed guests that wanted to come to this party. And so at this moment, the school, again, they found out about this and they wrote an other article about the party I was throwing. Then they wrote another article. So
the school you're attending is writing shitty articles about their student?
Yeah, so it's like a publication ran by students. But yeah, so before I even got to campus, I had 3 articles written about me. And so,
oh my gosh, and all of this is leading up to what happened.
Yeah, it kind of.
So do you think that this stuff fed what we're going to share? Do you think all of this stuff, because had that first hurtful thing, and then you're like, well, I'm going to show you a freaking party.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's all this hype and articles, and that fed kind of the road.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and you know what is so interesting is, and we're going to get into it, but before you were focused from your heart and a commitment and love and determination, right? And then here you get more here, right? Which is not here and not praying before and all that kind of good shit. Right. And this is where we get derailed, because this gets triggered and it spins and it spins and it creates stories and it creates all kinds of crazy shit. And if we're not aware of it, we start living it.
Exactly.
I've done that hundreds of times, brother.
No, so that's what ended up kind of happening. It was like really, it was like my coping mechanism. I was like, okay, like if you think I'm ridiculous, I'm going to really show you what ridiculous means. Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of like what ended up happening. And so I took on the pseudonym. I kept like my same first name, Stephan, but I took on this other name, Vincenzo. So I took on the pseudonym Stephan Vincenzo. And the reason I took on the name Vincenzo is because Al Capone's little brother was named Vincenzo. And like growing up, I always idolized gangsters. Like
why did you choose a pseudonym?
Because
there were 2 parts to you. There was the student and there's this, I'm going to show you a freaking party.
It was like a persona.
Okay.
It was like a persona. And so like I took on the pseudonym Vincenzo because like I always idolized gangsters and mobsters. And so like I kind of became like this persona, Stephan Vincenzo. And so I got to campus, and from the moment I got to campus, everyone knew who I was. Like it's like literally people were coming up to me like, oh my God, like you're Stephan Vincenzo. Like we're friends on Facebook, and people were taking photos of me. Like I was for lack of better words, I was kind of like a celebrity. You know, I wasn't famous.
It's like all press is good press, they
Yeah,
say.
that's kind of how I felt. Like I wasn't famous, I was notorious from like the time like I instantly set foot on campus. And so yeah, I ended up, you know, getting to campus, and like all these people kind of wanted to be around me just because, you know, I had this name going, and everyone wanted to go.
And you're a fun party. Everyone wants to have fun. You're the fun guy.
Right, exactly. So what ends up happening is the party happens. I think, yeah, it's like the first week of school. I ended up at this time there was this musical group called Danity Kane. I ended up booking them to come perform at my party. I had like a big radio DJ shout out the party. Like we really got the word out there. And so the party ends up happening, and a lot of people kind of go to see if it's going to be good or not. And I think some people wanted to go to have fun, and some people wanted to go to see if my party was going to flop or not. It ended up being a really successful party. I had 2,000 people attend my party, and like maybe like 1,000 people that couldn't even get in. And so I had a really successful party. I made more money at that time than I'd ever made doing anything.
I was going to say, it's like instantly you're running a business from one article to piss you off. But I want to get to, because after we talk about this, I want to also get in this crypto business because I'm so excited about that. Absolutely. So I want to get to how you went from Vincenzo, the new kind of notorious BIG on campus, who is saying, fuck you.
Yeah.
You're going to talk shit on me. I'm going to give you shit to talk about. And then tell me about the event, because eventually you kind of got further into the partying.
Exactly. Yeah. So essentially I threw this first party. So then like I built like this kind of like a little company. It was called New York City College Events. I had a couple other partners, and we started throwing parties like every month at clubs, at restaurants, at warehouses. And like during this time, the school kept on writing articles about me. They even had like this big school play that's like a big satirical thing. And they had a caricature play me. And his name was Stefanzo. And it was just like really weird. And it was one of those where I went to it and it was funny, but like everyone was like laughing at me, not laughing like with me, you know?
You went to it.
Yeah, and I went to it. And like it hurt my feelings, but like everything that kind of hurt my feelings kind of like pushed me.
It fueled you.
Right. And so anyways, my first year,
I'm so in shock that at Columbia, they're hyper focused on a kid who was excited and wanted to have a party.
Yeah.
And labeled you immediately. And then you're like, all right, I'll live that freaking label.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how it happened. And so my sophomore year, it was just like a tough year. Like my grandma passed away, and one of my best friends on campus, he passed away within 3 months. So like, I just really got into a depression, and like, I couldn't even study. Like it was so tough. And so I was in the library, like right before finals, and like, I just couldn't focus. And someone told me about this thing called Adderall. They're like, hey, like you could take one of these and
yeah, a lot of college students do that.
And like, you'll be able to knock out whatever paper you need to. And so this person gave me Adderall. And up until this point, like I'd never taken any prescription drug. Like my family's very like, they're on the more holistic side of things. They like things to be all natural. And I was never on any medication. And so I took this Adderall, and it helped me out so much. I was like, oh my God, like this is so helpful. And so I think throughout the next week, I found someone to sell me their Adderall, and I kept on going back to them. And every time I was paying like $5, $10. And so after a week of like taking it, I was like, this is really helpful for me.
And you're such an entrepreneur that all of a sudden you're in this kind of arena and you're like, okay, well, how can I, instead of me paying out, your little business mind took over.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't want to pay this out anymore. And I asked the person, I was like, how do you get a prescription? And like, oh, you just go to, you go to Student Health Services, you get a, appointment with one of the shrinks there. They'll give you an assessment, and just tell them that like you can't focus, and they'll give you a prescription like that. Like you'll be out of there with the prescription. And so I set up this appointment. I went, and they gave me like a questionnaire for ADHD. And so I was going through like this 60 question questionnaire, and I actually answered it honestly. And then I turned it in, and then and the person told me like, hey, you know what? Like based on this, you very much have ADHD.
Wait, I have to say something about that because I was always in trouble at school, always acting out, always talking, always, and I was constantly being yelled at my whole like school life. And then when I had kids, one of my sons was really struggling in school when he was in elementary school, and I took him to the psychiatrist, and she had me fill out a form for him. I was doing the form. I was yes to every question, like the high end of yes. I was like, oh my gosh, me. Oh my gosh. Like I never even read anything like that or knew I could have something. So by the end, I said, I'm yes to everything. She's like, well, we're here for your son. So let's do him and you come back on your own. But anyway, I actually got ADD medicine and it changed my life because my mind had giant potholes. So anyway, I'm just saying sometimes you do have it. And like if I were to take an Adderall, it would calm me and help me focus. I wouldn't get like hooked on it because it's something I'm lacking, if that makes sense.
So that's kind of how it was for me. Like
Yeah.
I was never told that I had ADHD. Like I never knew. And I was like, okay, so like that's what's going on. And so they gave me a prescription, and the guy told me, he's like, look, like you're a pretty big guy. He's like, you have long days, you have a tough schedule. I can prescribe you 50 milligrams a day. And like, I was like, okay, like I didn't know if that was a lot. I didn't know if that was a little. He's like, in the morning, you'll take an instant 20 you'll take a instant 10 milligram, and throughout the day, you'll take these 20 milligram extended release. And so I started doing it, and I became like super hyper focused, and like I got through my sophomore year, my grades were good. I was like back on track. But like this Adderall kind of started, because it was like such a high dosage.
Yeah.
Started really kind of it started eating away at my personality.
Yeah. It was too
And
much.
it made me very irritable. And so what happened was I didn't like how I was as a person on it. So I would only kind of use it for academic stuff. But the days that I didn't need it, I just wouldn't take it because like it was tough eating. Like it just really affected my life. And so I would use it just for school. And so at the end of each like month, I would have a bunch of pills left over. And so during this time, I was in a fraternity, and I'm going now into my third year, my junior year. I start off and things are going great. I'm like doing a double major. I'm getting into all the classes I need to get into. I'm taking this Adderall, and I definitely became like, my tolerance went up. I built like a dependency on Adderall. And so I lived in a fraternity, and everyone around me knew that I had an Adderall prescription. And so my friends and close people around me and people in my fraternity, they would ask me like, hey, could I have an Addy? And so at first I'd be like, yeah, like I've always kind of in the past been a yes man. Like I never knew.
Sure, you can have one. I'm not using them all.
Exactly. And so like at first it was like, here, like, sure, I'll give you one. And then word got out that I had it. And then next thing I know, like friends of friends are asking me, hey, can I have one? And so then midterms, I think it was midterms came around, and everyone wanted one. And like people just like started getting my number, and they started hitting me up for it. And so I had all these people asking me for Adderall. So at a certain point, I was like, I can't just like give it out. Like I'm not gonna have any for myself. So I started telling people, okay, it'll be like $5. It'll be like $10. But like at first, it wasn't even like necessarily like a business hustle for me, because like my hustle was still these parties. Like I was still doing pretty well from parties.
Well, you had double major and you're running parties and making money. And then you're realizing, if I'm going to give these out, I might as well not come out of my pocket. You guys can pay me.
Exactly. And so that's essentially what ends up happening. And so then so like I'm in my like first semester of junior year. And so one of my best friends, he started selling cannabis on campus. So he was bringing in cannabis from California, and he was selling a good amount, and he was doing that. And I always, like at that time, like in college, I got very acquainted with cannabis very early on. Like I started loving it. And so we would hang out all the time, and we would blaze all the time. And
how could you get stoned all the time and have a double major at Columbia and throw parties? Like you're that good?
Well, that, and I think the Adderall helped balance it out. Cause I think what happened was like the Adderall would get me so like on edge, and like the cannabis would like balance me out. And so like, I was in like this constant state of being high, but then also like on Adderall. And so that just kind of became my stick,
Yeah.
right? And
That's how easy it is to get into a drug habit.
exactly. And I was constantly like there was sometimes I was on these Adderall binges for 2-3 days. It's like not sleeping, not healthy, overdoing it. But like my classes were getting handled. I was taking 6 classes. My grades were good. So I was like, hey,
Wow.
like my output's good. Why not? And so my friend who's selling this cannabis, he starts selling to an undercover cop. And like he obviously doesn't know it's an undercover cop, and he's selling to this cop weekly. And like the amount is just getting larger and larger every week. Right. And so one day this undercover cop asked him, he's like, hey, I'm looking for some Adderall. Do you know who might have Adderall? He's like, yeah,
No.
yeah, my good friend Stephan, he's got Adderall. And so he like my friend calls me and he's like, yo, like I know a guy, he's really cool. Like he needs some Adderall. Like, can you help him out? And I thought, okay, like, I don't really know this guy, but okay. And so
Because you've been helping out a lot of other
yeah, so I was
students.
like, if he's your boy, like I'll help him out. Okay. So like I meet this guy. And again, like I was always like kind of just like high and on Adderall. So like I was like tunnel vision in terms of my books, but like everything else, like I wasn't paying attention to too much.
Yeah.
And so I meet this guy, and he seemed like a young guy in his early 20s. He didn't attend Columbia, but he had the story that like he worked on some film set, and like he would get all the things that the like cast needed, and like they would party a lot, this cast, so like they needed some Adderall. And so I was like, okay, like I can sell you some. He's like, I'll take as many as I can get from you. And I was like, listen, man, this is my prescription. Like I use it for like my classes. Like I use it because I need it. I can sell you 5, but that's like me doing you a huge favor. Like I'm like, I don't like sell Adderall. And so I sold him 5. And like I was like, okay. And I thought like I did him this favor. He's like, can I get your number? I was like, sure. So I gave him my number, and then he starts hitting me up like every week. Hey, like let me know when you get a refill on your prescription. Like let me know. And at first, like I found him kind of annoying. Yeah, like I found him kind of annoying, but like I didn't have any reason to think like an undercover would be like onto me for Adderall or anything. And so the next time that I got my Adderall refilled, he's like, hey man, like let me buy some more from you. How many can I get?
So this is from your own prescription. It's not like you are smuggling drugs in from another country in a tire in the back of a car.
Yeah, it was my prescription from the school. And so the second time I sold him 10, and cool. So I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks, and he started like pestering me again, like, hey man, can I get some more Adderall from you? And so the third time I sold him like another 10 pills. And by this time I was kind of getting like annoyed by him, just because he was just like very pushy. And like I remember like he'd come to like my room, and like I don't know, like I was just very open with him. Like he told me he wanted to be a filmmaker, and he gave up on his dreams. So like I was always encouraging him to like pursue his dreams.
Oh.
Yeah, like I was giving this guy pep talks, all this. And so like by the third time, he's like, hey man, do you know where I could get ecstasy? And I was like, no, dude. I was like, I've never, like, I don't know about that drug. Like, I don't do that drug. Like, I don't know. And so he kept on texting me like, hey, do you know someone? Like, could you find out? And I was like, no, like, so like, I just kind of wanted to get him off my back.
Yeah.
So I knew this guy on frat row, because frat row was quite small, who sold that. So I was like, you know what? This guy, he can help you out. Like, hit him up. Here's his number. And he was like, okay, cool. So after that, he stopped hitting me up. And so I was like, cool. Like, I forgot about this guy. I just like went back to like my regular,
Oh no.
like my regular routine, focus on my classes, all that. And so he goes to that guy. He buys ecstasy from him a couple times. And then he asked that guy, hey, do you know where I can get acid? And the guy's like, yeah.
So he's just finding guys who are giving drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
To make a package bust.
Yeah, exactly. Like he manufactured, like no one was working together. It was literally like he was a very
not a drug ring, right?
It wasn't a drug ring. And so anyways, he buys ecstasy from this guy. Then he asks him for acid. So he gets referred to his roommate, buys acid from his roommate. And yeah, so a few months go by. And it's the beginning of finals. And so before finals, there's a study week, right? Where like there's no classes and everyone's just studying, preparing for their finals. And so like I'm super focused in the library. I remember particularly there was like a 3-day period where I was just up for 3 days straight on just like Adderall, drinking like.
Okay, that's crazy. But that's what college kids do because they're stupid.
Super unhealthy. And like I had like really long papers. I had like all these challenging finals.
I say because they're stupid, as I was snorting cocaine and making out in broom closets.
It's right. Like it's
It's college.
college, right? It's college. And so I remember by the third day, I was extremely just like tired. And I was like, okay, it was like 3 a.m. I was like, all right, I need to go back to the frat house and sleep. So I go back to the frat house and yeah, like I see a couple of the like the pledges that are hanging out in the frat house. And so I invite them down to my room because I had weed. I had like maybe like an eighth of weed. And so I was like, I'm trying to go to sleep, but I'm on this Adderall, like come smoke with me. And so I invite a couple of the pledges down to my room and we smoke the rest of my weed. And then I like around like 5 a.m, I kick them out and I tell them, hey guys, like I'm really tired. Don't mess with me. Because like there was a tradition in the frat where like the pledges were supposed to like do like a big prank on like a brother, like in the house. And so I told him, I was like, I love you guys, but like if you try anything on me, like I'm gonna be super mad about it. And so like I kicked him out of the room, I locked the door, and I'm exhausted, so I knock out. And like an hour later, I hear a knock on my door. It's like around 6 a.m. And my first thought, it's the pledges. I'm like, oh my God, it's the pledges. They're gonna try to prank me. Like I specifically told them not to bother me. I was like, I'm not gonna answer the door. I was like, I already know what it is. So I just ignore it. And I hear this knock again. I ignore it. The third knock is this red battering ram that cracks my door down. And 25 NYPD officers wearing black from head to toe with riot shields, everything. They burst into my room.
No.
Assault rifles and everything. And it felt like a dream. Like at first I thought it was the pledges with costumes.
Well,
like,
A, you haven't slept in 3 days. B, you're still high.
Right.
C, you think it's a prank.
Yeah. And so I thought it was like the pledges pranking dressed as like cops. And so I was like, this is crazy. Okay. I was like, I'm thinking you guys got me. But then like one of the officers puts a gun on my head, like presses it to my head. And then they throw a riot shield on my chest. And another one jumps across and smashes me in the face with one of the flashlights, like those police lights.
Yes.
Yeah. And so essentially at that moment realized it's not the pledges. I'm like, the pledges wouldn't hurt me like this. And so I'm kind of in shock. And so like I'm asking him like, what's going on? And the same guy who smashes me in the face with the flashlight, he pulls out a taser and he puts it like directly like on my chest, like on my heart. He's like, say one more word and I'm gonna tase you. And I knew that if he was gonna tase me, like I'd probably die because it was like right on my heart. And so at that moment I was like, I'm cooperating. And so one of the officers next to him maybe felt bad. I don't know what. He was like, all right, that's enough. And so they ripped me out of the bed. I'm just gushing blood down my face.
Oh my God.
The guy who hit me, and I'm like, hey, dude, like you made me bleed. Like why would you do that? He's like, I didn't make you bleed. He's like, you tried to assault a police officer. Everyone here saw that. And the whole room is like, yep. And so that moment, I knew that they were just like completely against me. So the first thing I asked them, I said, let me see a warrant. And so they pulled out the warrant. They showed me my name.
How'd you even know to say that? I wouldn't even know to say that.
Because I wanted to be a lawyer at the time.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I wanted to so I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. So I kind of knew a little bit about the legal process. And so I saw
Did you say I want to see a lawyer?
No, because at that time.
Not yet.
Not yet. And so like I'm just in my boxers. They have me cuffed up. And so they're like destroying my room. They're like slicing up my bed, slicing up my couch. They're looking for drugs. There's nothing. Like the weed got smoked. My Adderall, like I had no Adderall left. And so they're absolutely like outraged that there's nothing in my room. And like, hey kid, where are the drugs? Like, we know there's drugs in this room. We know there's drugs in this house. Tell us where the drugs are. And it'll go so much easier for you. Like, we know there's drugs in this house. And so I said, look, that's my name on the warrant. You got me. That's all you're going to get. And so then at this point, the guy who hit me in the face, he goes through my closet and he picks out my school hoodie that says Columbia. And he says, you're going to wear this. And I said, no, like, please not that. Like, I have so many.
Oh my gosh. I noticed that you were wearing that in the pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. So he comes out and he says, you either wear this or you go out shirtless. And it was December in New York, absolutely just so cold. And so like, I didn't want to go outside just shirtless. And so I said, okay. And so they put this sweater on me. And at that moment, I knew it was going to be something much larger than I could even imagine.
Yep.
So anyways, they end up taking me, essentially like the SWAT team takes me out of the fraternity house. and it's like 6:30 in the morning. And you can just imagine a huge drug bust like that. Everyone in New York, like in the streets, they're just stopped watching this happen. And like, I'm being taken out by like 4, like pretty much like SWAT team officers. And it was just really crazy because a lot of the, I knew a lot of the school employees, like that were like janitors and that worked in like the cafeteria. And a lot of them were Latino. And like, I bonded really well with them just because we bonded. And like, there wasn't that many Latino students on campus. And so they were always just like pretty proud of me that I was at that school.
Oh.
And they were also really, they liked the fact that I was just like humble and I was always down to greet them and I took interest in them. And so they saw me, all of them saw me getting arrested. And it was just like so heartbreaking because like, they were like, man, he's like our golden kid. Like, and it was so sad to like see me disappointing them. Right. And so like, I'm being, like I'm being like carried down Broadway. And so I get thrown in this paddy wagon. And then minutes later, I see my friend. Then I see this other guy, and this other guy, and this other guy. And one thing I knew was that everyone in this paddy wagon, they were all like real drug dealers. Like they were doing that. They made a lot of money from that. I wasn't a drug dealer. And so they all looked at me and like, Stephan, why are you here? I was like, I don't know. And like the last thing on my mind was Adderall. I was thinking like maybe one of my parties, maybe like, cause I threw some parties that were maybe,
oh, you weren't even aware it's you gave out some of your prescription to people.
Cause I didn't think that you could get in that much trouble and get beat up and all that over some Adderall. And so what ends up happening is
wow, they lumped you in with
completely. And
because you got thrown, your name got put in the circle of names.
Exactly. And so they never told me what I was charged with. They never read me my rights, nothing. And so I get taken to the precinct. No one tells me anything. Good cop, bad cop comes by, good cop comes by. They're not telling me anything. And so before they before they transport us to the courthouse, one of the police officers in the precinct called every major news network. And so on this transpo, they let everybody put their hoodie on except for me. And so I asked the officer that was taking me, I was like, can I please put my hoodie on? And he was like, no. And I was cuffed up, so I couldn't put it on myself. And
why?
So I said, well, because it was part of the story. Like they needed.
Because you're Latino and you're the party guy.
So I'm Latino, I'm the party guy, I'm the Gates Millennium Scholar, I'm all these things. Like,
oh shit. They were so happy to parade you and try and ruin you.
Yes. Yeah, that was
exactly.
Yeah. And so like I fit the narrative, whereas these other kids didn't quite look like the typical drug dealer. They came from a lot more wealthy family.
Yeah, the white affluent kids got to put their hoodies up.
Exactly. And so they walked me really slow. My face was bashed up. I had like, this big Band-Aid. I looked really rough. And so I see these cameras and my first thought was, oh my God, like, I don't want my mom to see me do the perp walk. Like, I was like, I don't want my mom to see me like this. So like, I tried to tilt my head, not because I was ashamed, because like, I knew I didn't hurt anyone. Like, I knew I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't ashamed for a second. I just didn't want my mother to have to see me like that. So I tried to tilt my face a little bit. And like, I just felt that camera flash. And I knew, I was like, that's going to be the picture. Right. And so I end up at the courthouse and it ends up being like a huge case. Like I couldn't have anticipated. They allow all the photographers in the courtroom, which is not so typical. And
oh my God.
My cuffs are super tight. And I couldn't even make a pleasant face if I tried. And they're just snapping in my face. Like they're saying comments, they're trying to provoke a reaction. And I'm just
oh my gosh.
And so I have this public defender that comes. And
the
first question he asked me, he's like, hey, do you come for money? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, no, I don't. And he's like, all right, you're going to Rikers. He's like, good luck. I was like, what? He's like, do you want to see the indictment? He's like, this is an X indictment. It's pretty serious. I was like, okay. He's like, you're being charged with 13 felonies. I was like, 13 felonies?
What?
He showed me and I saw like the events and the dates and like I put it together. I was like, oh my God, it was because of this. And I was like, all this because of
That's
Adderall?
When you realized it was from Adderall.
I was like, because of Adderall? He's like, yeah. He's like, Adderall is a Schedule II drug. He's like, so this is pretty much the same as, it would have been the same if you sold Coke. He's like, it's like you were pretty much selling Coke. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. And he's like, and the officers are saying that you tried to fight one of them. So they're going to try to press like assault charges. And he said, they're also going to try to hit you with the federal racketeering, with like a racketeering charge. They're going to try to hit you with the RICO charge. And they're going to also try to push for a conspiracy charge. And so when I heard conspiracy and I heard RICO, I knew that was extremely serious. And so I go up in front of the judge. They asked me how I plead. I pled not guilty. Immediately they detained me, and I'm off. And so it was just the wildest day, because I go from being at my dream school that I worked so hard to get to just being in custody and then getting processed. And so I end up at this detention center.
Oh my gosh.
They gave me one call, but my parents live outside of the country. And so I couldn't call them. And since I was just so used to cell phones, I couldn't remember anyone else's number. And so I couldn't call anyone. And so then immediately they put me in a holding cell. And in this holding cell, like, I'm seeing people in there with like knife wounds on their face, people being like in there for murder, people in there for all kinds of, and I'm like, oh my God, like how
I sold Adderall.
Yeah, I was like, how did I end up here? And so I knew that was not the place to show weakness. And I knew that wasn't the place to show.
You couldn't cry or feel how you wanted to feel because you're surrounded by bad boys who would feed off that, like bullies on a playground.
Exactly. So I had to just keep like this very stoic exterior. And so then finally so one thing when
you're a kid in college.
I was 19 years old, because I was always like 1 year younger than everyone. So I was 19. So I end up getting, so while I'm waiting in this holding cell, I don't know if there wasn't much going on in the world, but this was the one story that was like on repeat. And they were talking about Operation Ivy League, this huge drug bust, and they wouldn't show anyone but me. They just kept on showing my face. And they mentioned every drug. They'd mention cocaine, weed, ecstasy. They'd mention every drug but Adderall, right? And they would show my face. So they mentioned like this whole slew of drugs, and they'd always just show my face. And so I was like, wow. And so they ended up taking me to like my...
And you're by yourself without an attorney and without a family member or no one helping you or holding your hand.
Yeah. So I end up, they take me to this this cell block. And so as soon as I walk in, it was so interesting. Everyone knew who I was. It was like, I was kind of like famous in jail.
Already in prison?
Yeah. It was kind of like when I got to campus, everyone knew who I was. In jail, everyone knew who I was, because I was on the front page of like 4 or 5 different like newspapers in New York. And so like all these inmates are reading this story, and they're reading about my Gates scholarship. They're reading about all these things, and they see me come in. And so this guy comes up and he introduced himself. He's like, yo, I'm like the mayor. I'm like the mayor here. He's like, yo, we know all about you. He's like, you know what? You had that scholarship? He's like, yo, that's crazy. He's like, the fact that you had that scholarship and you were selling drugs, yo, that's crazy. He's like, yo, you're smart and you're gangster. Yo, that's nuts. I was like, yeah, I guess so. And so like they come, I was like, okay, yeah. And so they come and they give me like these 7 different articles. They're like, yo, look, like, yo, we commit crimes every day, but we don't make it on the front page of papers. Like, I don't know how you made it on the front page of everything. That's crazy. And so they give me all these papers. And it's wild because honestly, in jail, everyone was so kind to me. Like I actually experienced some of the most kind. It's like I really saw God in jail through all these people. Like there was so much kind, like in the most unlikeliest of places, right?
I just have to say, I go to prisons and I do therapeutic work with inmates who are lifers. They're some of the most beautiful. They touch my heart so deeply. I always walk out transformed and weeping that they can be so beautiful and be so free, yet they're jailed for their whole life.
I could agree. And so what ended up happening was everyone, even though jail's pretty segregated, everyone like embraced me, like the Latinos, like the Black people, the white people, everyone in jail, like they embraced me. Like, everyone wanted to hear about my story. They all gave me advice. And what they all kept on saying was, yo, you got to get out of here and you can't come back to jail. So, like, you have to go out there and you got to become an attorney and you got to fight for people like us. I was like, okay. And they were like, you know what? This is like a movie. You should write this into a movie. And I was like, okay. And then I just couldn't understand why this was happening. And I spoke to a guy, he was Rasta. He was a Rasta. And he was telling me, he was like, hey man, he's like, how are you doing? And I was like, man, like, I can't believe this. This is bullshit. This is crazy. He's like, yeah, I hear that. But how are you doing? I was like, I just can't believe this. He's like, you're not hearing what I'm asking you. How are you doing? I was like, well, I guess I'm alive. I'm okay, I guess. I was like, I just don't understand why this is happening. He's like, this is a culmination of all the sins you've ever committed. That's what he said to me. And that was like the first moment where it kind of made sense. I was like, well, I don't think necessarily like I'm a bad person, but if karmically speaking, all the things I've ever done resulted in this, I could accept that. Okay. And so I asked him, I was like, why are you in here? He's like, I'm here for eternal sleep, man. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, think about it. You smart Ivy Leaguer. He's like, eternal sleep. I was like, murder? He's like, yeah, man, but my case is bullshit too. He's like, the difference between me and you is you're gonna walk out of here. I'm gonna be in here for the rest of my life. And so I was like, wow. And so it was like so much to process. I end up in my cell for the first time, and like I had my own cell. And so I start reading all these newspaper articles, and the way they describe me, they're talking about me as if I'm a drug czar. They're saying, you know, that I'm the kingpin of this drug ring, all this. And so as I'm reading these articles, I started kind of questioning myself. Like I started saying, was I a drug czar? Maybe I was a drug czar and I didn't even know about it. And so like, I'm just reading like this whole complete warped image of who I am. And like, it starts like messing with my mind. And like, I'm picturing like all the disappointment that like I'm bringing my parents, my family, my high school. And I got like really depressed. And like, I got this thought that like, I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what, if I kill myself, it would just like, I don't want to deal with life. I don't want to
Too
deal
overwhelming.
with. And so like, I started like tying up my bed sheet, and like, I was like trying to figure out how I was going to hang myself. And like, it's what's crazy about a thought. If you think about it long enough, it can manifest and become real.
Thoughts are fucked up.
Right.
You hold a bad thought, it will manifest in your life.
Exactly. So I was thinking about it, and when I thought about doing it, all I kept on thinking about was my mom, and like just like her eyes. I kept on thinking about her, and I kept on thinking about my friend who passed away, and I had a photo of him, and I decided to put the the sheet down, and I didn't do it, and I just like decided to pray. And I decided to pray. And so by that time, my family who lived in New York, I had some cousins who lived in New York, they saw it on the news. And so I had a cousin, he came to visit me, and he's like, Stephan, what's going on? And I told him, and he's like, look, a lot of this doesn't make sense to us. And we know you're not a bad guy. He's like, we're working on getting out of here. And so my mom ended up seeing this on CNN. She didn't know. And so she was just watching the news one morning, getting my little sister ready for school. And she hears Columbia, and she's like, oh, my son goes there. She turns up the volume, and she sees me doing the perp walk.
No.
Yeah. And so my little sister, she was like 4 or 5 years old at the time. My mom turned off the TV because she just didn't want my little sister to see me in that image.
Oh.
And so she tells my dad. My dad takes the first flight over to New York, and then they go to bail me out. And my bail was like $50,000. And because it was a drug case, they had to audit my parents' accounts, which I don't think was particularly necessary, but just because they wanted to, they like audited my parents' accounts to make sure it wasn't drug money. My parents like put up a property to, be able to bail me out. And so, days later, I do end up getting bailed out. It's like 1 a.m, and my dad's there, and he has like this big jacket, and he's like, hey, look, put this on. There's paparazzi outside trying to get photos of you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, 5 days later, they're like hanging out outside of like this detention center trying to get
the hottest made up story to take down a kid who worked his whole life to get to that spot.
So yeah, that's pretty much. And so like my dad told me one thing, and these words helped me so much. He said, look, like, don't apologize. Like, don't explain yourself. He's like, just remember this, like, this too shall pass. I was like, okay. And like every day. How
beautiful for your father to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And my parents were so supportive and so loving with me. And so like, I just kept on kind of saying that like a mantra. I was like, this too shall pass. And I was like, one day I can't wait for the day that I can look back on this and just.
When was that day? What happened? Did you get an attorney, fight it, and get off?
Okay. So what ends up happening is I get bailed out. And at that time I had long hair, kind of like I do now. I just started growing it back out with the pandemic, but that time I had hair like down to here, and like, I just love my hair. And everyone would ask me like, when are you going to cut your hair? When are you going to cut your hair? And I would always say, one day I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to know that that's the day. And so the next day I woke up, I knew that that was the day I needed to cut my hair. And so my dad took me to a barber. I said, cut my hair. And like, but it's so nice. It's so, I was like, cut it. Like, how do you want it? I was like, just cut it. And so they ended up cutting my hair. I clean shave, I get a side part, and I end up looking pretty different. And so my dad said, okay, look, this is a very serious case. They're pressing some serious charges against you. We have to find a really good attorney because that's the only shot you'll have. And so we see, I think it was like 11 or 12 of the best attorneys in all of New York City. And everyone wanted this case because it was so high profile. And so we met with some of like the best mob attorneys.
All of it's so effed up. Like the best attorneys want you so they can be seen too. It's like, it's just a freaking media show on your ass.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And so like these mob attorneys want this case. Everyone's charging exorbitant amounts. And then we find out about this one attorney, and he represented a bunch of rappers. I love hip hop. And so he represented Wu-Tang, like a lot of the members from Wu-Tang, and he represented some athletes. And he just seemed super cool. And my dad made an appointment to go see him. And it was like on a weekend, so his office was closed. So he like agreed to see us at like his mom's home in the city. And it was like super personal. And so I met him, and he was the first person like not trying to sell me something. Like he just seemed like a real person. And his name's Peter Frankel. I'm eternally grateful for him because he really helped me get my life back. And so he looked at me and he said, look, Stephan, you're not a bad guy. Like I've seen bad people. You're not a bad person. You just made a mistake. He's like, what's happening is they're making like a media circus out of this. And you're not going to really get like a fair like case just because it's so high profile. If it was any other person, it'd be a slap on the wrist and you'd be on with your life. He's like, look, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I promise you that I will fight for you as if you were my son. Okay. Oh. I'm going to walk with you every step of the way. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I'm going to get you an outcome that's livable. And the goal is that you're not going to do jail time. The goal is that you're going to not get a felony. And the goal is that you're going to be able to go back to a school and complete your education. And so I just felt his sincerity. Like I just felt it. And I agreed. I said, okay, I want him to be my counsel. And so starting then, we went to court for 2 years straight. Yeah, 2 years straight. So pretty much every 2 weeks, I was having to go to court. And at first it was extremely stressful because I didn't know if I was gonna have to go back and do time. I didn't know what it was gonna look like. And so immediately I got suspended from Columbia. I became persona non grata. I couldn't be on campus. And it was pretty wild because like a lot of the people, I would say the majority of the people that I knew on campus immediately just like cut all contact with me. Like they just thought, okay, like, oh, he's a drug dealer, he's this. And like, they just cut all contact with me. It's just like kind of overnight, like I lost the majority of my friends except for a select few. And I know exactly.
I just have to say something real quick. So when my estranged husband moved out and we separated, all the friends we had for 20 years stopped talking to me because he's a celebrity. And I was just out in 1 second. And I just know that feeling. It's devastating when you're already going through something hard. That even crushes you more.
It's such a lonely, I've never felt so lonely
alone
in my life. And so I tried to stay in New York. I was staying with some of my family in New York, and my family, fortunately, like my close family was so supportive of me and they didn't judge me. And that means the world to me. But I was just so depressed in New York because like I just couldn't do anything. I applied for jobs. I couldn't get anything because people would Google me and I'd come up as like this thing. And so one day my mom said, look, like you're stressing in New York. Like, why don't you come out to Bahamas and just spend some time here with us? And so
that's where your parents live?
Yeah, my parents, they're marine biologists. So they live in Bahamas.
Wow.
And so they've been out here.
That's not a place to suck. It's not like come back to your small town in the middle of nowhere.
Right. So I was like, you know what?
I'm to the ocean.
I was like, why am I suffering here? I was like, let me go out to Bahamas. And so I'm in Bahamas. And I was just so sad about my reality that like I didn't want to be myself. And so I started watching TV. Like I always kind of liked film and TV, but I never had the time. I was just too busy. But I started like watching The Sopranos. And I started just like watching all these movies. And I fell in love with these characters. And like I wanted Tony Soprano's problems. I didn't want my problems. And I fell in love with these worlds. And I thought, you know what?
That was my favorite show of all time.
One of the greatest. James Gandolfini, such a legend. Like amazing. Oh. And so I thought, you know what? These guys that told me I should write this into a movie, like I should. Like, how do I do that? I don't know how, but I'll find out. And so like I ordered a book about screenwriting from Amazon.
Did you write a movie?
Yeah, I have a screenplay.
Where is it?
I haven't shopped it out yet. And
I'm going to help you.
Thank you. I would love that. Like,
Because the whole time I was like, well, I didn't know you wrote it. I was like, I know the perfect guy to partner you with, to write it with you and to make this into a movie. But you've already written it. So if you're open to co-creating what you've written with someone, I
I
have
love
somebody
co-creation.
really amazing. I look forward to helping you with that.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I started learning the screenplay format, and it gave me kind of like, it gave me a new hope in life. Like I went from being hopeless to all of a sudden having like this inspiration and like this mission. And so like I spent time studying, and then I went back to the States, and I couldn't get work. And so one of my mom's friends had a roofing company in Tennessee. And he said, come work with me as a roofer. And so I started working as a roofer, and it was like really tough physical labor.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting paid much. And then one day I nearly fell off a roof. And so I was like, oh my
Wait,
God.
I have to speed this up because I can't take it. I like that you got a job and you did stuff that you would not normally do, and it was
Yeah,
hard as hell, right? For your learning. But I need to know this because we're going to run out of time, and I still
sorry.
have to get.
Absolutely.
No, I'm wanting to touch the crypto stuff, but I don't want to let that go.
Yes.
But I want to ask a few questions. So, 2 years of in court with this judge,
Right.
2 years of looking for work, got the roofie job. When did that end? What was the day that you were done?
Okay. So what ended up happening was I'm doing this roofing job. I end up kind of losing that. I end up kind of just like sleeping in my car and like in Tennessee. Like I'm there, I'm writing the screenplay, like I'm living in my car. And I'm working on the screenplay, and my mom
In
said
Tennessee.
in Tennessee. And
When the hell did you go to Tennessee?
like kind of in that time where like I'm not in school, like I'm trying to find work. So I'm in Tennessee. And so my mom calls me one day and she's like, look, you have to go back to school. You have to get your degree. I don't care where, but just finish. So I was like, okay. And so I start looking at community colleges, and every question on there is like, have you ever been convicted? Have you ever been charged with a crime? And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to apply to
Isn't
that.
that so weird? Like, you were a golden boy with no drugs who worked his ass off, and now you can't even apply for freaking junior college.
Exactly.
In
Exactly.
one day, everything can be destroyed like that.
Change like that. And so then I end up looking up Emory, which is a really good school in Atlanta. And their question was, and they had a great film department. They have a great film department. And so their question was, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And at the time I was still in the case and there was no conviction. So I put no. And I wrote some good essays. I had to write some essays. I wrote some good essays. I submitted, and I didn't think they'd be crazy enough to accept me. And months go by. My case resolves. I end up getting community service, a misdemeanor, and time served.
Okay, so that lawyer got you everything he said.
Everything he said.
What about the other guys
The other guys,
who were real drug dealers? Did they get the same slap on the wrist as you? Because that's effed up if you got the same as them.
some of them got some more serious convictions, and some
Not
of them,
that I want him to. I just hate that you were so small in that big fishbowl.
yeah, some of them got like more serious convictions for sure. And like the prosecutor was like very set on wanting to give me a felony. And like my lawyer was like, what's the benefit of giving this young man a felony? Like he's not a drug dealer. Like he literally got caught up in the situation. And so I ended up getting this misdemeanor. The case resolves wonderfully. I go back to Columbia to see if they'll let me in.
What happened?
And so I go to Columbia, they hear me out. Like I cry in the interview, like, and they say, look, we can't get over the fact that you wore our hoodie. And I was like, look, like they put,
Oh my gosh, they're focused on bullshit.
yeah. And they're like, we just can't get over that. And so I was like, look, they put a gun to my head. Like I didn't have an option. They didn't care. So pretty much a couple of days later, Emory accepts me. And I was like, oh my God, like they really accepted me. And so a couple of weeks go by, the semester at Emory starts. Columbia calls me to let me know that I've been terminated as a student. And so at that time, I tell them, actually, you didn't check the registrar because I actually withdrew as a student and I no longer even go there. And so by
that, motherfuckers.
yeah. So by that time, I was on my way to school, my first class at Emory. I finished my last year and a half there. I got a double major in political science and film. And yeah, that like sent me on my like film route. And Emory showed me a lot of love. No one knew who I was there. And I got to have kind of like a normal rest of my college career. But during
Oh,
all this time, like what really kept me going was prayer. Like I learned to meditate. I got really bad PTSD from it, really bad anxiety.
of
And so
course.
like it was these tools, it was like this prayer, it was this meditation that really helped me. And so the more I did it, the better I got at meditating. And so once I finished school at Emory, I moved out to California to LA to become a screenwriter, right?
The City of Angels.
And that led me into acting. Then I became like a working actor. And you know, as I was running around the city doing all these things, you know, I would meet all kinds of people on set. And then I remember, I think it was like 2019, somebody on set was like really telling me about crypto and just like how it's the future and how I should get into it. And so that was like when I first bought some crypto. I got into a little bit, I got into some Bitcoin, I got into some Ethereum.
So it's so cool. Like people just come along and say little things to you, right?
Yeah.
People feed us what our next steps are.
Exactly. And so like the more I started learning about just the crypto world, I was like, oh my God, like this is so fascinating. And
It's so fascinating.
Right. I was like, and it doesn't end. I was like, and every day there's so many new developments. So I became kind of like a nerd in the space and I started just learning more about it. And then I started meeting other people that were really passionate about it. And so then I just got into trading crypto and just holding crypto. And then I think it was it was about a year and a half ago, I found out about NFTs and it just like blew my mind. I was like, what?
Non-fungible tokens.
Non-fungible tokens. And
which
so,
means they're like, you can't trade them for something equal. They're one of a kind. You own them.
and they're documented on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
And so they're a digital asset that you own. And if you own that, only you own that, right? And so I became really fascinated. And so for like a year, I just followed projects. Good projects, bad projects. And I was trying to just like wrap my mind around it.
That's what I'm doing right now. Just starting in it going, wow, there's so much. It's exciting.
So exciting. And at first it was just like so much, but then it ends up being just like such a fascinating point for me. And so I end up reconnecting with one of my friends, Theo, who you met yesterday.
Yeah, darling, sweet.
Went to Columbia with me. Theo, he held me down the whole time. And we kind of reconnected on the fact that we were both into crypto and we were both like on the spiritual path. So we would like send each other like things about meditation, different videos, different techniques. And like, just like our passion for both these things just kept us in touch, even though he lived in New York, I lived in LA. We both really got into NFTs. And so one day he called me and he's like, yo, how cool would it be if there was an NFT that like gave people an affirmation and that affirmation could help them like change their life. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And so we thought like, what would that look like? And I thought, you know, how cool would it be if it was like a baby that was meditating that had.
So NFTs, you guys, NFTs, these non-fungible tokens, usually they have a caricature or they have something like is it? Ape Monkey? What's it called?
Bored Ape Yacht Club. That's
Bored Ape Yacht Club. If you look up Bored Ape Yacht Club, they're all just apes.
And so a lot of the popular NFTs are what you're talking about. They're profile pics. So you'll see people put them up as like their Twitter or like their Instagram like picture. And like, that's where like.
But isn't that an NFT?
Exactly.
So if I wanted to put an NFT up of me as an animal, it would be somebody, I actually made an NFT, right? It's not like me it'd be my NFT.
Well, that, or you could buy one. Like if you buy one from a collection, a lot of people like to kind of show off like what collection.
Yeah, their work, right.
Kind of like being part of a club in a way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what ends up happening is this idea starts and we're like, how can we create an NFT? And so we just start studying all these other collections. We end up designing the art for like these babies. And so we come across the name, like we reach this name, Zen Baby Academy. And so it's a collection of babies.
Well, I have to just say, because you said this last night and I loved it, that you chose a baby because a baby is just straight from God. It's pure. It hasn't had any earthly thoughts or shit covering it. It's just in pure bliss and joy.
It's direct from source.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's our freshness of who we really are. And we got covered, we've forgotten, but really we are the freshness of a baby.
Babies are the ultimate teachers, right? And so like we were all babies at some point, right? And
so they chose an image of a baby,
exactly,
which I love.
We chose these babies, and it's this collection of 8,888 babies, and they have all different styles, they're all different races, like all different
I
backgrounds.
think this might be my first NFT.
Wow, that's exciting. That's, I think this is going to
A
be a
Zen
lot of
baby.
I think this is going to be a lot of people's first NFT, right? Because like what we want to do with this collection is we want to create a spiritual community that operates on the blockchain, and this community is going to learn from one another, right? Like everyone in this community, they're all going to teach and they're all going to learn, right? And it's going to be focused around meditation, yoga, breath work, esoteric learning. Like once you get into the realm of spirituality, like it doesn't end. It's kind of like crypto. It's like limitless, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like that, we started building this idea and we started like attracting different people into our lives that became part of our team. And now we have this international team and we're getting ready for our launch this summer. And so we acquired land in the metaverse in Decentraland.
Okay, this is cool, you guys. Decentraland, is that what it's called?
Decentraland, yes.
So it's in a virtual world. Where is this virtual world? On Web3, or is it on a platform?
So essentially, this virtual world is hosted. It's like on the blockchain, right? And so it's this world that is broken down into all these plots, right? And like these plots of land they're called parcels, and people can build on these parcels whatever they could imagine, like any kind of building, any kind of structure.
So my daughter plays Roblox, and I was saying this. So I watch her build a house, and she builds over there something, and she can run around her different neighborhoods.
Same kind of idea, exactly, same concept. And so essentially, like we're building the first monastery in the metaverse, from what we understand. And so this monastery is going to be where these Zen babies live. So if you're part of the Zen Baby Academy collection, then the monastery is your home and you can access it at any time. And in this monastery, we're going to have mass meditations. We're going to have group classes. We're going to have sound baths.
I'm going to be leading some stuff in that monastery.
And you're actually like, you're the first person from the spiritual space that's going to be working with us to teach others and to bring the conscious collective over to the space. So that's the goal of this, is to teach people about crypto, teach people about NFTs, about the metaverse process, and then help people raise vibrationally.
I love it so much. I love it too that I met Martin just because I saw him standing there and knew I was supposed to talk to him, and we're doing some cool stuff together. And then he introduces me yesterday to you guys, and you're here right now. And it is my two things. It's bringing in the other 84% who are not in crypto in America. Exactly. And sharing the gems and the knowledge and the knowing I have from connecting deeply with God, and the difference between this kind of life, which takes you to prison, right? Which gets you, you were talking about praying, and then praying stopped. And then you said, fuck you, I'm going to live what you said I am.
The ego took over.
And that ego took you really into hell.
It did.
And that's how I say we experience heaven and hell on the planet. When we're moving from here, we're in hell. The people who've done their healing work in prison are freer than the people I know outside who are in hell, in prison, in their own minds.
They've somehow found that internal peace.
Yeah. So yours is such a great story of praying and manifesting in beauty, and then ego stepping in and hijacking you off your path, your true path, to take you so far. You see how low you can go.
Yes.
When you're off center.
And then killing that, like having life and reality kill my ego, and have to like really reconstruct myself from there.
So Stephan, you said something about killing your ego. And all I want to say about that is our ego is necessary. It keeps us human. Otherwise we'd be floating back in the stars. But what is wonderful about the ego is when it's working for your purpose in your heart and your soul. When it's running the show, we're fucked and we're crazy and our life sucks. But when it's being of service to our purpose and helping us communicate and stay here and all that, egos are necessary. When they get on their own and they run on their own, it's complete separation from God, because it's man-made, crazy ass human spinning thoughts that aren't real, right? And take us to hell.
that's it. It took me a long time to understand that, and because for so long I thought like my ego gave me power, because like it did, but then the ego could also very much
False power.
Right. And then where you really go wrong is if you ever start thinking that you're great, like, and if you like, in terms of like, if you think that like the greatness comes from you,
Yes.
and that you own the greatness, you're wrong. Cause like the greatness isn't yours. It doesn't come from you. It comes from the source. So you can be grateful that you're blessed with ability.
You can be humble that you're great because it's coming from something way, way more than your humanness.
Exactly. But if you don't do that, life has a very unique way of humbling you and making you learn it. And it could be drastic sometimes.
And what I love too is that you went down hardcore. I mean, holy hell, I've heard nothing like that from such a great guy. I've had times where it seems for me, I learn my lessons best when I get smashed face first on the ground and my teeth are knocked out and I have to lay there for a while and writhe in pain. And then I stand up and go, okay, how do I get my teeth back in and make sure I don't do that again? And I think that that's what exploring life and not being a victim of it is glorious. Like that hurt like hell. I learned so much. What did I really learn and how can I use that to be of service? And I think that your story is freaking compelling and I want to help you get that movie made. And I love you. I know that we just met yesterday, but I just love you. And I want to ask, would you come back next week? Because we didn't get a dive in. I know we're already over, but we didn't get a dive into all the crypto stuff, which really I have a hunger for.
I would absolutely love to come back. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation today. And going to have me come back. Like it's such a joy to speak with someone like you. Like you're just so filled with just light and energy, and you're so honest and raw. And thank you for this opportunity.
My pleasure. Okay. I love you. I will see you next week.
Sounds good.
You guys come back because he's awesome and he's going to teach us some stuff.
Look forward to crypto. I can talk about crypto all day. So next week I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, doll.
Take
Bye.
care.